He had never thought that love would leave him because of money, but that was exactly what happened. For 3 years, he had tried his best to be a good boyfriend. He remembered birthdays, listened to her problems, supported her dreams, and stayed loyal even when life felt heavy, but no matter how hard he tried, one thing always stood between them: his financial situation. He came from a simple background. His father had worked small jobs his whole life, and his mother managed the home with very little. He was the first in his family who dared to dream bigger. He wanted to start his own business one day, but for now, he was doing whatever work he could find. Some weeks he earned enough to survive, other weeks he barely paid rent. At first, she said she understood. She told him money didn't matter and that love was enough. He believed her because he wanted to. Whenever he apologized for not being able to take her to expensive restaurants, she would smile and say it was okay, but slowly, things began to change. She started comparing him to others. It began with small comments. She would talk about her friend's boyfriend who had just bought a car, or another friend who went on a luxury vacation. She would scroll through social media and sigh loudly, showing him pictures of couples traveling abroad. He could see something shifting in her eyes. One evening, they were sitting in a small cafe. He had saved money for 2 weeks just to take her out. It was not a fancy place, but it was clean and warm. He thought she would appreciate the effort. Instead, she looked around and said, "Don't you ever feel embarrassed?" The question hit him like a slap. He asked her what she meant. She replied that she was tired of struggling, tired of pretending everything was fine, tired of explaining to her family why her boyfriend still didn't have a stable career. She said she loved him, but love was not paying the bills. He tried to stay calm. He told her he was working hard, that success takes time, that one day things would change. He reminded her of all the nights he stayed awake planning his future, all the risks he wanted to take, but she looked at him with disappointment instead of hope. "You always talk about the future," she said, "but I am living in the present." Those words broke something inside him. He realized that while he was building dreams, she was losing patience. Over the next few weeks, the distance between them grew wider. She stopped calling as often. Her replies became shorter, colder. He felt it happening but didn't know how to stop it. He worked longer hours, thinking that earning more money would fix everything, but he only became more tired and stressed. Then came the night that changed everything. She asked to meet him at a park where they used to spend time together when they were happy. He thought maybe she wanted to fix things, maybe she missed him too. He arrived early, holding on to hope like it was the last thing he had. When she arrived, her face was serious. She did not smile, she did not hold his hand, she went straight to the point. "I can't do this anymore," she said quietly. He felt his heart beat faster. He asked her what she meant even though deep inside he already knew. "I need stability," she continued. "I need security, I want a better life, and I don't think you can give me that." He felt ashamed, as if being poor was a crime. He wanted to defend himself, to argue that he was trying his best, but the words felt heavy in his throat. She told him her parents never approved of him. They thought he lacked ambition because he did not yet have success to show. She admitted that their opinions had started affecting her. She said she was tired of waiting for something that might never happen. Then she said the sentence he would never forget. "I don't want to struggle anymore." In that moment, he realized she was not just leaving him, she was leaving the version of him that was still becoming something. He asked her softly if there was someone else. She hesitated for a second before saying there wasn't, but her silence told a different story. He knew that even if there wasn't someone yet, there soon would be, someone more successful, someone richer, someone who looked stable on paper. Tears filled his eyes, but he refused to let them fall in front of her. He had already lost her. He didn't want to lose his dignity too. He nodded slowly and said, "If this is what you want, I won't stop you." She looked relieved more than sad. That hurt the most. Without another word, she turned and walked away. The same girl who once promised to stay no matter what was now choosing comfort over commitment. He stood there long after she disappeared. The park felt colder than usual. The laughter of other couples sounded distant and painful. He felt small, invisible, and worthless. For the first time in his life, he questioned whether love was only for people who could afford it. That night, he walked home alone, not just heartbroken, but deeply wounded in his pride. He felt like he had failed, not only as a boyfriend, but as a man. He did not know it yet, but this painful goodbye was about to become the turning point of his life. The room felt smaller than ever that night. When he closed the door behind him, the silence was louder than any argument he had ever had. There was no message from her, no missed call, no sign that she regretted her decision, just a quiet room with peeling paint, a thin mattress on the floor, and unpaid bills scattered across the small wooden table. He dropped his keys and sat down slowly, staring at the wall as if it might give him answers. For the first time, he allowed himself to feel everything at once, the humiliation, the anger, the sadness, and the heavy weight of not being enough. He replayed her words again and again in his mind, "I don't want to struggle anymore." It wasn't just a breakup sentence, it felt like a judgment on his entire life. He looked around his tiny rented room. The old fan made a clicking sound as it turned, the window didn't close properly, letting in cold air from outside, his shoes were worn out, his phone screen was slightly cracked, everything around him suddenly looked like proof that she had been right. For a moment, he questioned himself, maybe she deserved someone better, maybe love really wasn't enough, maybe dreams without money were just foolish ideas. He stood up and opened the drawer where he kept his documents. Inside were printed business plans, rough sketches of ideas, notes filled with calculations and strategies. He had spent months working on a logistic startup concept, believing that one day it would change his life. Now those papers looked like fantasy stories written by a poor man trying to escape reality. He felt tired, not just physically tired, but tired in his soul, tired of trying, tired of explaining, tired of promising that, one day, things would be different. His phone buzzed suddenly, breaking the silence. It was a notification from the driving app, reminding him of available late-night shifts for designated drivers. He stared at the screen for a long time. Part of him wanted to ignore it, to switch off the phone and forget everything. But rent was due in 5 days, his electricity bill was already late, and heartbreak did not cancel responsibilities. He let out a slow breath and accepted a shift. Being a designated driver was not his dream job. He drove other people's cars while they sat in the back seat, laughing, drinking, talking about investments, vacations, and business deals. Sometimes they treated him with respect, other times they acted as if he was invisible. Still, it paid enough to survive. He changed into a clean shirt, even though the collar was slightly faded. He looked at himself in the mirror. His eyes were red from holding back tears, his face looked older than his age. "You have no choice," he whispered to his reflection. Outside, the city was alive. Bright lights shined from tall buildings, expensive cars moved smoothly on the roads, restaurants were full of people enjoying their perfect lives. He felt like he was walking through a world that did not belong to him. As he waited for his first ride request, he sat on a bench near the parking area, watching couples walk past him, laughing and holding hands. Each sight felt like a reminder of what he had just lost. For a second, anger rose inside him, not at her, but at himself. Why wasn't he successful yet? Why hadn't his plans worked out? Why was he still struggling while others seemed so far ahead? But deep inside, beneath the frustration, there was something else, a quiet voice that refused to die. It reminded him of the nights he stayed awake studying business models online, of the times he skipped meals to save money for future investments, of the belief he once had that his situation was temporary. Maybe he had lost her. But had he really lost his future? Another notification popped up on his phone, a high-paying late-night pickup in the wealthy part of the city. He hesitated for a moment. That area always made him feel out of place. Then he pressed accept. As he walked toward the pickup location, he didn't know that this simple decision would soon change everything. Right now, he was just a heartbroken man trying to survive one more night. He adjusted his shirt, straightened his shoulders, and reminded himself of one thing. He might be poor at the moment. But he was not finished. He almost canceled the ride. His thumb hovered over the screen as the pickup details flashed in front of him. Luxury district, private club entrance, premium client rating, the kind of request that usually meant dealing with wealthy strangers who would never remember his name. For a brief moment, exhaustion whispered to him, "Go home, sleep, forget the world." But something stronger pushed back. Maybe it was pride, maybe it was desperation, or maybe it was the quiet need to prove, to himself more than anyone, that he wasn't defeated yet. He locked his phone and started walking toward the location. The city looked different after midnight. Neon lights reflected off wet roads, music echoed from clubs, expensive cars lined the streets like trophies on display. He adjusted his worn jacket and reminded himself that tonight was just another shift, nothing special, nothing life-changing. At least, that's what he believed. When he reached the club entrance, security guards stood tall in black suits, scanning every car that arrived. He felt slightly out of place standing there, but he kept his posture straight, professional, calm, invisible. A notification buzzed. His passenger was approaching. Moments later, a tall man in his late 50s walked out of the club. His suit was perfectly tailored, his watch gleamed under the streetlights. Even from a distance, he carried the quiet authority of someone used to being obeyed. The man looked slightly intoxicated but controlled, not careless, not loud, just tired. "Are you my driver?" the man asked firmly. "Yes, sir," he replied politely. The keys were handed over without hesitation, a black luxury sedan, smooth and powerful, probably worth more than he had earned in his entire life. He opened the passenger door for the man and took his seat behind the wheel. As the engine started, the soft hum of the car filled the silence. For the first few minutes, neither of them spoke. The city lights moved quickly outside the window. He focused carefully on the road. Driving such an expensive car required full attention. One mistake could cost more than he could ever repay. Then, unexpectedly, the man in the back seat sighed deeply. "Do you ever feel," the passenger began slowly, "that loyalty is rare these days?" The question caught him off guard. Drivers were rarely asked about their opinions. He hesitated before answering. "I think loyalty depends on circumstances, sir." The man let out a quiet laugh. "That's a careful answer." Silence returned, but it felt different now, less distant, more curious. After a few minutes, the passenger spoke again. "How long have you been doing this?" "A year," he replied honestly. "And is this what you always wanted?" That question struck deeper than expected. He could have given a simple answer, could have said yes, could have kept things professional and distant. But something about the night felt strange, almost like it was asking him to be real. "No, sir," he said calmly, "this is what I'm doing for now." "For now?" the man repeated, interest growing in his voice. "Yes," he continued, "I have plans. I'm working on a business idea. I just don't have the capital yet." There was no shame in his tone this time, just honesty. The man leaned slightly forward. "What kind of business?" He swallowed his nervousness and explained, "A tech-based logistics platform designed to help small delivery companies optimize routes and reduce fuel costs." He spoke clearly, passionately, forgetting for a moment that he was just a driver. As he talked, his confidence returned, the same confidence he had when he first wrote his business plan, the same belief that had kept him going even after rejection emails and failed pitches. The passenger did not interrupt. He listened carefully, occasionally asking sharp questions that tested the strength of the idea. Instead of feeling intimidated, he felt challenged, alive. By the time they reached the destination, a large gated mansion, the conversation had lasted almost the entire ride. He parked the car smoothly and stepped out to open the door. The man didn't exit immediately. He studied him for a moment, as if measuring something invisible. "You said you don't have capital," the man said thoughtfully, "but you have clarity." He didn't know how to respond. The passenger stepped out and adjusted his suit. "Come to my office tomorrow morning," he said, handing him a business card. "Let's see if your idea is worth more than this driving job." For a second, he thought he had heard wrong. He looked down at the card. The name printed on it belonged to the founder of a powerful investment firm, a company known for funding multi-million-dollar startups. His heart began to race. Just hours ago, he had been sitting alone in his tiny room, questioning his worth after being left for being poor. Now, he was holding a card that could change everything. The gate slowly closed behind the wealthy man. He stood there under the night sky, the engine of the car still warm, his mind spinning faster than the wheels ever had. This was supposed to be just one last shift. But sometimes, the night you think means nothing. becomes the night that changes your entire life. The business card felt heavier than paper. He must have read the name on it at least 20 times before sunrise, sitting on the edge of his thin mattress, still wearing the same clothes from the night shift. He kept flipping the card over as if it might disappear. It carried the name of a man known in financial news, a man whose company had funded projects worth millions. For a few seconds, excitement would rise in his chest, then doubt would quickly crush it. Why would someone that powerful care about a driver's idea? Maybe it was just polite talk, maybe the man wouldn't even remember him in the morning, maybe he gave cards like this to everyone after a few drinks. Sleep never came. Instead, he opened his old laptop, the screen flickered before turning on, and he pulled up the folder that held his business plan, the same file he had almost deleted 2 nights ago after the breakup. Now it felt different. He began reviewing every slide, every number, every sentence. He corrected spelling mistakes, improved charts, adjusted profit projections, and added clearer explanations. His mind was sharp despite the lack of sleep. This was no longer just a dream file stored in a forgotten folder. This was an opportunity knocking once. By 8 a.m., he was standing outside a tall glass building in the financial district, the kind of place he used to pass by while driving clients, wondering what it felt like to work inside. People in formal suits walked confidently through the rotating doors, holding expensive coffee cups and speaking into wireless earbuds. He looked down at his simple but clean shirt and straightened his shoulders. He reminded himself, you belong here if your idea belongs here. Inside, the reception area was bright and silent. A large logo of the investment firm shined on the marble wall. He gave his name to the receptionist, half expecting confusion. Instead, she nodded politely, he's expecting you. Those 3 words sent electricity through his body. Expecting you. He followed an assistant into a spacious office on the top floor. The city skyline stretched beyond the glass windows, cars below looked like tiny toys moving across the roads. The same man from last night stood near the window, now fully sober, sharp, and focused. No club lights, no background music, no alcohol. Just power. Good morning, the man said calmly, turning around, I'm glad you came. For a brief second, he felt small again, just a driver in front of a financial giant. But then he remembered the conversation in the car, the questions he had answered confidently, the passion in his own voice. Thank you for giving me the chance, he replied respectfully. They sat across from each other at a long table. He opened his laptop, hands steady despite the pressure building inside him. Show me, the investor said. He began presenting his logistics platform idea, explaining how small delivery companies wasted thousands on inefficient routes, how his software would use smart algorithms to reduce fuel costs and increase delivery speed, how the market was growing rapidly due to e-commerce demand. At first, his voice was careful. But as he continued, it grew stronger. He wasn't just talking about numbers, he was talking about years of observation, late-night research, and personal struggle. He had seen drivers waste fuel, seen small businesses close because of poor planning. He understood the problem because he had lived close to it. The investor interrupted occasionally, asking sharp, detailed questions about scalability, competition, and revenue models. Instead of freezing, he answered honestly. When he didn't know something, he admitted it. When he believed strongly in something, he defended it calmly. An hour passed. Then another. Finally, silence filled the room. The investor leaned back in his chair, studying him carefully. You were heartbroken last night, the man said suddenly, catching him off guard. He blinked, surprised. Yes, he admitted quietly. And yet you showed up today prepared, the investor continued. Most people would use pain as an excuse, you used it as fuel. He didn't know what to say. The investor stood up and walked toward the window again, looking out over the city. Do you know why I invest in people? He asked. He shook his head. Because ideas are common, the man said slowly, but resilience is rare. The room felt very still. Then the investor turned around and said the words that would divide his life into before and after. I'm willing to fund this. His heart skipped. $50 million, the investor continued calmly, but understand this, I'm not investing in your software alone, I'm investing in you. For a moment, he thought he had misheard. $50 million. The same man who had been left for being poor less than 48 hours ago was now being trusted with an amount of money he couldn't even imagine counting. Shock, gratitude, disbelief, and fear all mixed together inside him. He realized something powerful in that moment. The breakup that had crushed him. The lonely night shift he almost skipped. The decision to speak honestly in the car. Every painful step had quietly led him here. And this was only the beginning. The first transfer notification did not feel real. He was sitting in the same small rented room where he had once counted coins to buy dinner, staring at his laptop screen as the official confirmation email appeared. The investment agreement had been signed, legal teams had reviewed everything, and now the first portion of the $50 million had been wired to the new company account. For a long moment, he did nothing. No celebration, no shouting, no dramatic reaction. Just silence. The same cracked wall stood in front of him, the same old fan spun slowly above his head, the same thin mattress lay behind him. But everything had changed. 2 days ago, he had been called unstable, unprepared, not good enough for the future. Now, a powerful investment firm believed in him enough to risk millions. The contrast felt almost cruel. His phone buzzed constantly with calls from unknown numbers, lawyers, financial advisors, startup consultants, people who suddenly spoke to him with respect. Respect sounded very different now. Within a week, he moved into a temporary corporate apartment arranged by the firm. It was clean, modern, and quiet, the bed was soft, the windows overlooked the city skyline. But the strange thing was, he didn't feel different inside. He still woke up early, still reviewed his notes, still double-checked every decision. Because deep down, he knew money could disappear as quickly as it arrived. The real test had just begun. The company was officially registered, a small but skilled tech team was hired, developers, data analysts, operations managers, all of them more experienced on paper than he was. On the first day in the new office, he stood at the head of the meeting table, looking at the team seated around him. A week ago, he had been driving strangers to their homes. Now, he was leading professionals who expected direction. His palms felt slightly sweaty, but his voice remained steady. He explained the vision again, not as a dream this time, but as a mission, a logistics platform designed to help small and mid-sized delivery companies cut costs, optimize routes, and compete with bigger corporations. He shared stories from his time as a driver, how he saw wasted fuel, inefficient planning, frustrated workers. This company, he said firmly, is built from real problems, not theory. The team listened carefully. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into intense months of development. The office lights stayed on late into the night, whiteboards filled with strategies, numbers were tested again and again. There were problems, many problems. Software bugs, market competition, unexpected expenses. At one point, a senior advisor suggested reducing the scale of the project to lower the risk. For a brief moment, fear returned. What if his ex-girlfriend had been right? What if he wasn't ready for something this big? But then he remembered standing in that park, being told he couldn't provide stability. He remembered sitting alone in his tiny room, feeling worthless. That memory became his fuel. We don't shrink because we're scared, he told the team calmly, we solve the problem and move forward. His leadership style surprised many people. He was not loud, not arrogant, not flashy. He listened more than he spoke. He respected every employee, from the senior developers to the office assistant. Because he knew what it felt like to be invisible. 6 months later, the beta version of the platform launched. A few small delivery companies agreed to test it. The early results were promising. Fuel costs dropped by nearly 20%, delivery times improved significantly. Word began to spread. Industry blogs picked up the story of a former designated driver launching a tech startup backed by millions. Interviews were requested, podcasts invited him to share his journey. But the moment that truly felt unreal came one evening when he saw his own name in a business news headline. From driver to CEO, the startup changing logistics. He stared at the article for a long time. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about validation. Not from his ex, not from her family, not from society. But from himself. One night, as he sat alone in his new office after everyone had left, he looked out at the city lights. The same city that once made him feel small. Now it looked different. Not because he had conquered it, but because he had proven that circumstances can change faster than opinions. His phone vibrated softly. A message from an unknown number appeared on the screen. "I heard about your company, I'm proud of you." He recognized the number instantly. His heart didn't race, his hands didn't shake. Instead, he simply looked at the message with calm eyes. Because the real victory was not the 50 million. It was the fact that he no longer needed anyone's approval to believe in his own worth. The office smelled faintly of fresh coffee and the faint trace of paint from the walls that had been recently renovated. He had been running non-stop for months, but today felt different, heavier somehow. The investor who had given him the 50 million asked to meet in person again, the kind of meeting that always made him nervous, because he knew that with millions on the line, one small mistake could ruin everything. He arrived early, dressed sharply, but without arrogance. His heart raced as he waited in the sleek glass lobby. The sunlight bounced off the polished floor, creating streaks of light that made him squint. When the elevator doors opened, the investor stepped out, perfectly composed as always. His presence commanded attention, not because of loudness, not because of wealth, but because of the quiet authority that radiated from him. "Good morning," the investor said calmly, walking toward him. "I hope you've been making progress." "Yes, sir," he replied, keeping his tone steady, though inside, nerves twisted like a storm. They walked through the corridor to a private conference room, the walls lined with dark wood, shelves filled with books and awards, and a massive glass table stretching from one end to the other. He sat across from the investor, feeling the weight of the room and the history it represented. "Let's talk numbers," the investor said, sliding a folder across the table. "I've reviewed your projections. They're ambitious, but I need to understand if you're ready for the next phase." He opened the folder carefully, scanning the details he had memorized over the last weeks: revenue streams, growth projections, cost analyses, operational challenges, staffing, market risks, all laid out in precise, honest terms. The investor listened silently, occasionally raising an eyebrow, nodding slightly, making him feel as if each word mattered more than air. "Your platform shows promise," the investor finally said, "but scale is where the real challenge lies. I want you to expand aggressively. 10 times the users in 6 months. International reach within a year. And I'm willing to back it." He blinked, trying to process the words. 10 times the users, international reach. It was terrifying, exhilarating, almost unbelievable. 50 million is the starting point, the investor continued. "I'm not just giving you money. I'm giving you a network, mentorship, and the expectation that you will deliver. Fail, and it's gone. Succeed, and the rewards are limitless." He nodded slowly, feeling the gravity of the moment. "This isn't just an investment," the investor said, leaning forward, "it's a test of character. I don't care how talented your developers are, how polished your software is, or how perfect your pitch is. What matters is how you handle pressure, setbacks, and unexpected challenges. Can you do that?" He swallowed hard, thinking back to the nights of heartbreak, exhaustion, and struggle, all the times he had almost given up, all the moments he had questioned his worth. "Yes, sir," he said firmly, "I've already learned to face pressure, failure, and uncertainty. I can handle whatever comes next." The investor smiled faintly, a rare expression of approval. "Good," he said, "because the next step isn't easy. You'll be opening offices in 3 new cities, hiring senior managers, coordinating logistics for hundreds of clients, and maintaining operational excellence across the board. Mistakes aren't just inconvenient, they're costly. Can you handle the responsibility? Yes, he said again, this time with more confidence, I can. The investor leaned back, folding his hands, studying him carefully. You're not just a startup founder, he said finally, you're a leader. And leaders are forged in fire. I've watched how you handled last week's crisis with the beta launch. Calm, decisive, resourceful. That's why I'm willing to place my trust, and millions, on you. He felt a rush of emotions. Relief, disbelief, pride, and gratitude all mixed together. The investor's words weren't just about money, they were about validation, acknowledgement that the struggles of the past, the breakup, the late-night driving shifts, the feeling of being invisible, had prepared him for this exact moment. He closed the folder, letting the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. Thank you, sir, he said sincerely, I won't let you down. The investor nodded, standing up, I know you won't. Remember, money changes circumstances, but your character determines the outcome. Don't lose sight of that. After the meeting, he walked through the city streets, sunlight warm on his face, but he barely noticed the people around him, the honking cars, the bustling life. All he could feel was the truth of what had just happened. 2 days ago, he had been heartbroken, almost broken, rejected because he had nothing. Now, he was trusted with 50 million, a network of powerful mentors, and a mandate to build something extraordinary. It was surreal, almost unfair. But more than anything, it was proof that the world didn't care about his past struggles or heartbreak, only about what he could do next. And he was ready. This wasn't just an investment, or a business deal. It was the moment that turned a struggling driver into a man who could shape his own destiny. And he knew that nothing, no rejection, no setback, no doubt, would ever hold him back again. The first days after the funding felt like walking on a tightrope stretched between two worlds. On one side, there was the memory of his small rented room, the nights he counted coins to buy dinner, the loneliness after being left, and the weight of rejection that had pressed down on him for months. On the other, there was a sprawling office, a team of talented professionals waiting for direction, and a capital investment that could change everything if he didn't falter. It was exhilarating, terrifying, and oddly humbling all at once. The first morning in the office, he arrived before anyone else, the polished floors reflected his shoes, the sunlight bounced off the glass walls, and the hum of the air conditioning felt almost loud in the quiet space. He took a deep breath and reminded himself why he had come this far. Not for money, not for fame, not for revenge. But to prove to himself that struggle was temporary, and effort could change destiny. The team trickled in, one by one, each professional bringing years of experience and expertise. They looked at him with polite curiosity, some skeptical, some cautious, and a few with the faint glimmer of hope. He welcomed them warmly, speaking calmly but decisively, not as a boss trying to impress, but as someone who had lived the problems they were solving. The work we're doing here isn't theoretical, he said, pointing to his laptop where diagrams of delivery routes and fuel optimization models filled the screen. These are real problems faced by real people every day. Our job is to make their lives easier, faster, and smarter. The team nodded, some taking notes, others asking questions. He answered each question honestly. Even when he didn't have a complete answer, he promised clarity within hours, not empty assurances, but actionable steps. Over the next few weeks, the office became a hive of activity. Developers worked late into the night, coding, testing, and debugging. Data analysts cross-checked every number, operations teams created simulations for hundreds of deliveries, and he, the man who had driven strangers through city streets just a month ago, coordinated it all, learning the language of leadership as he went. There were mistakes. Several times, a code error caused simulations to crash, client expectations clashed with technical limitations, and for a moment, he feared he might have bitten off more than he could chew. But he didn't panic. Instead, he reminded himself of the nights he had worked alone, exhausted and heartbroken, driving a car for strangers, plotting ideas on scraps of paper, learning to survive with nothing but determination. If he could survive that, he could survive this. Slowly, progress came. The beta version of the platform launched, and the first client companies reported noticeable improvements. Fuel usage dropped, delivery times became faster, and workers expressed satisfaction with the smoother operations. He watched the feedback come in and felt a sense of validation unlike anything before. This wasn't just a product, it was a promise fulfilled. News outlets caught wind of the story, covering it with the headline, "Designated driver turned tech entrepreneur revolutionizes logistics." The narrative of heartbreak and overnight success spread online, drawing attention, interviews, and even investment inquiries from other firms. Despite the sudden fame, he remained grounded. He remembered what it felt like to sit alone in his tiny room after being rejected. He remembered the nights spent driving strangers, feeling invisible, unheard, undervalued. That memory was not a source of pain anymore. It was the fuel that kept him pushing, thinking bigger, working harder, and refusing to settle. One evening, after a particularly long day, he sat at his office desk, overlooking the city lights. The glow of skyscrapers reminded him of how far he had come, and yet, how much further he could go. A message from a client popped up on his phone, praising the platform for solving problems they didn't think could be fixed. Another email came in from a potential investor wanting to explore partnerships. He smiled quietly, feeling a strange calmness. This was the moment he had been preparing for. Every heartbreak, every late-night shift, every rejection, every small failure had led to this. He realized that life didn't just reward talent or ambition. It rewarded persistence, resilience, and the courage to act when everything else seemed hopeless. The thought of his ex-girlfriend briefly crossed his mind, but this time, it didn't sting. Instead, he felt a sense of closure. She had left, thinking he wasn't enough, but now, he was building something bigger than either of them could have imagined. The city outside continued its restless rhythm, but inside, he felt steady, grounded, and alive. Because he had discovered the truth. Success was not about luck, or timing, or even money. It was about refusing to give up when the world had already given up on you. And tonight, sitting in the glow of the office lights, he knew he was just getting started. This was not the end of his journey. It was the first step in a life that no heartbreak, no failure, and no doubt could ever take away from him. Months had passed since the platform had launched, and the success was undeniable. The small company he had once imagined on scraps of paper had grown into a full-fledged operation, offices in 3 cities, a dedicated team of developers and managers, dozens of satisfied clients, and even media coverage that highlighted the rags-to-riches story behind it all. He had become a man the world recognized, not for wealth alone, but for resilience, vision, and determination. One afternoon, as he was reviewing reports in his new office, his phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. He hesitated before answering, curiosity mixed with a strange feeling he couldn't place. "Hello," he said cautiously. "Hi," a familiar voice replied, soft but unmistakable, "it's me." His heart skipped. It was her. The girl who had left him for being poor, the same girl who had once told him she couldn't see a future with him, claiming he wasn't enough. For a second, he felt the old rush of emotions, hurt, anger, disbelief, but it was tempered by the calm confidence he now carried. "Why are you calling?" he asked quietly, steady, almost indifferent. I heard about everything," she said, hesitation thick in her voice. "About the company, the funding, everything. I wanted to reach out." He leaned back in his chair, studying the ceiling, the city skyline visible through the tall windows behind him. Memories of the park, the breakup, the nights he sat alone counting coins, driving strangers, and doubting his worth surfaced like old scars. "I see," he said simply. I made a mistake," she continued. "I didn't understand what you were capable of. I was short-sighted, selfish. I'm sorry." He could hear the sincerity, but also the subtle hesitance, the same hesitation that once told him she had already moved on in her mind before she even left. He smiled faintly, a small, quiet expression, not of joy, but of closure. "You're not wrong to have left," he said after a pause, voice calm. "You wanted a different life. You chose what you thought was best for you. I can't hold that against you. Silence followed. You've changed, she whispered, almost like a question. Yes, he admitted. I have. But not because of anything you did. I changed because I refused to let rejection, heartbreak, and struggle define me. I learned that life doesn't wait for anyone. You either act, or you remain stuck. She was quiet again, no words left. Thank you for calling, he added softly, I hope you're happy with your choices. There was a brief pause, then she said, I hope you're happy too, and ended the call, leaving him alone in his office. But this time, the silence felt different. It wasn't emptiness. It wasn't heartbreak. It was freedom. For the first time in years, he realized that his value was not tied to anyone's approval, affection, or judgment. It was tied to his own determination, resilience, and vision. Looking out at the city below, he reflected on how far he had come. From nights spent driving strangers through the streets, heartbroken and invisible, to leading a multi-million-dollar company, respected by employees, investors, and clients. The lesson was clear: rejection could hurt, failure could crush, and circumstances could limit, but only temporarily. What defined a person was not how they were treated, but how they responded. He returned to his desk, opening a new project plan, a roadmap to expand internationally, to refine the platform, to create opportunities for others who, like him, had once been overlooked, underestimated, or left behind. He smiled faintly, thinking about the path that had brought him here. The breakup that had broken him had also propelled him, the heartbreak had forced him to face his own worth and take action. Every late-night driving shift, every sleepless night, every moment of doubt had quietly built the man he had become. And now, with the city sprawled beneath him and the world watching, he knew that nothing, no rejection, no failure, no heartbreak, could ever define him again. Because he had learned the most important lesson of all. Your value is never determined by others. It is built in the choices you make when no one is watching. In the courage to continue when the world doubts you. In the resilience to rise after every fall. And in the vision to turn pain into power. He leaned back in his chair, letting the sunlight from the windows warm his face. The skyline stretched endlessly ahead. Full of opportunities, challenges, and possibilities. And for the first time in his life, he wasn't just looking at the city. He was ready to shape it. Because he had already shaped himself. And nothing could take that away.